All right, what's up, y'all? I got another little dubstep Riddim loop here with like some grumpy sound and bass sounds in it. So let me go ahead and play that and you can know what you're getting into.
They copy my whole fucking flow.
And I'm going to make this one another two-parter. So for this section, for this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make the main bass, the little grumpy gun and growl sound, and they sound like this. Okay, so starting things out with this grumpy gun, I've turned off all the effects. I have turned off all of my modulations here, and we start out with this pretty static sound. So I'm going to play it for you. And that's without post effects or anything or the filtering. So we'll just jump in and start going through it. So I have the first wavetable is the Shrats, which is in the digital folder right here. Pitch down 2 octaves. Nothing changed on this top row of knobs. And then the bottom, the wavetable position is all the way to the left. FM is on 40% and it's FMing from B here. And then we have the level is being modulated by LFO1 set to envelope mode, which means it's going to restart every time that the note is pressed. And then it's on BPM sync and the rate is set to 1/8. So then kind of running through oscillator B really quick as well. We have basic MG, which is right here near the top of the analog folder. Pitch down 1 octave and wavetable all the way to the left. No changes to any of these knobs, and then no warp type on this one, and then the level is all the way down. So this one's not a sound source, it's just going to be acting as an FM source for oscillator A. And then I will go in and start turning on the modulation. So in LFO2, which is this shape, same exact settings here with these, but the shape is just set to kind of pluck a little bit. So if I turn that on, we have it just kind of like pops the, you know, it just gives it almost a transient. So doing that on the wavetable position here for oscillator A. And then I think from there we can just move into the filtering. So I have a distortion comb as the filter, the bandpass, distortion comb 2 bandpass, and I believe it's being modulated, so I'll go ahead and turn that on. So with the filtering, it sounds like this. And you can probably kind of hear that, but if I turn it all the way up, you can really, it's doing quite a bit of plucking to the sound. And I turned the mix to 40, just kind of like after I got that nice pluck to it, I just ran that, you know, ran that back. Which kind of gives it that like rubber band popping type sound, which is something that I must kind of gravitate towards. So we have our cutoff is all the way down, and then same settings as these two for the type, the mode, and these, you know, 4 things. I don't know what you would categorize that as. And then the rate is on 1/8, but it's just literally a pluck on it. The only things I'll say here is the resonance is turned up quite a bit to 80. The drive's at 49, and the filter variance is kind of important on this. So as you can see, moving it around changes the tone of the pluck quite a bit. So just, you know, worth noting, because we also go in and modulate it later again with one of these. Macro 1. Okay, yeah, so it's modulated again by the master tuning knob, which we'll get into later. So let's go ahead and get into the effects on this. So I have a dimension expander, just giving it a little stereo, a distortion, giving it some grunginess, and then we have a phaser, which gives a little bit more richness to the stereo because it is being plucked by the same LFO that's doing the filter. So the frequency's being kind of plucked on, and then the feedback's pretty high, depth is pretty high, and the rate's on 0. So it's not moving around at all, right? Like the bands of the filter, the bands of the phaser are not moving at all. It's just adding as another layer of like pluckiness to it. Specifically to the stereo image, because in the left and right channel, it's being phased, it's being plucked differently because the depth it means the two different phaser sets of poles are in different positions. So it's adding almost a stereo pluck to it. And then we have another filter here, a high notch. And as you can see, we are doing a pluck on both of these. So it's kind of just hitting the low band with a high pass, right? Or not the low band, but the low end with a high pass that goes up to about the midpoint. And then there's a high pass going up, which gives it a little more pump to that low end. It cuts the lows, but then it also brings that mid range up a little bit when it gets to its peak. And the notch is going down towards the middle of the sound. So as you can see, moving the wetness around, moving the mix around, you can kind of just mix that to where you want it. I think 40% sounds good, especially because we're about to do some more stuff to it. So resonance at 50%, drive at 30, going down to the EQ here. So where I went in and had the high pass pop up with a good bit of resonance, I also have this notch, this little volume cut band right here, pop in that same spot. And then just a little bit of a boost to the highs here with a band, not a high shelf, but a band. Now let's go ahead and add the compression onto it. And that just kind of sausages it out. As you can see, I didn't change anything except for the threshold. And yeah, so let's go back and kind of explain some of these modulations there, some of these automations that are going on. So as you can see, this sound has sounded completely different from this one, right? That almost sounds nothing like this one. It's because I am, instead of changing the note pitches, instead of doing it that way, I have this little master tuning automation, which is set to, so I have this first macro modulating the master tuning, which is in the global settings here, the master tuning of this synth, and it's pitched up by 19 units or cents or whatever you would want to call that. And basically, if you have it set to 19, that means that all the way up would be an octave up. So -2 would go to -1, -1 would go to 0, and then down would be -2 to -3, -1 to -2. So what this does is acts as basically a pitch that I can set to any synth that I have this master tuning set up on, to where the sub, anything else that I want to modulate this by, which in this track, it's only the gun and the sub that are getting changed. These other synths don't change at all. But you can basically go in and have them do the same pitch as each other without changing the notes of them. So then we also have macro 1 changing the filter variance, which changes the tone of the sound quite a bit. So as you can see, if I turn it off there, it almost gets a little more riddim-y, but less pitchy. So since the master tuning is changing with this comb frequency, it just helps the comb fit to the it basically matches the comb to the pitch of the sound. It's not an exact science because they're not changing it like related amounts. It's just kind of like a set it to taste type of deal. But I felt like that helped this sound be a lot less static. Basically, it helps it to glue together and be one moving sound kind of. So then if you look at our next little automation clip here, we have this grouchy automation, and what it does is changes the patch in a way that makes it just sound quite a bit like grungier and darker and grumpier. And the way that I did that was just I have this macro here, the grouchy knob, and all it does is turns the oscillator A, the Schratz oscillator, down an octave, so it would be going down to -3. Then we also have a tone knob here, and this one is set to the wavetable position of both wavetables. Oscillator B is being changed. It's just that 100%, scans through this wavetable here. So which gets into like a square, or, you know, just a different tone for the FMing to be done on. And then the Shrats is being moved up in this range here. And so if I go and show you where these change at, it's in the second half. And that is quite a bit. It's a lot more fundamental and less of the high harmonics that we have on this original one. So it almost makes it cleaner and less crispy. So then if we go in, my last modulation is on the FM switch, and it's just turning the FM up. And all I use that one for is these little triplet stutters that we have here. And it almost gets into like a bro steppy sound with those. Same thing here. This is the FM changer right here. So if I show it, you can really tell on this one. Almost gives it that like bro steppy sound. So going into our effects, I have an EQ. So as you can see, I'm cutting all of those lows out. Everything that would interfere with the sub is getting cut out. And then I'm cutting some mid-range just to kind of clean it up and give space for the clap and the kick to be punchy. And then we have an OTT. And it's bringing a little bit of those lows back in, and then it's pushing the mid band up quite a bit. And the time is really low on this, so it's there's not too much tails that we have to fight off here. So I did keep the depth up at 100%, which I don't typically do. Just gives it a lot more volume, as you can hear. And then this flanger is really like, all it's doing is just giving a stereo image. Just separating the left and the right channel a bit. Then we have a phaser. Again, just adding a little bit of stereo. And then another OTT. And as you can see, it's almost identical to the first one. And the one thing that I will note here is the high band. With it all the way, with the depth all the way up, you can hear it kind of adds a tail that I don't like, so I kept it at 50%. But you can see it's kind of smashing that transient on the high end down a little bit. And then boosting the mid band a little bit more, and just kind of gluing the side and the mid and the stereo channels together that I just affected with those two flangus and phaser. And then in this last EQ, I don't need this band, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Those highs that I just punched down, I add another big boost to that. And boost the mids a little bit. So almost the exact opposite, or kind of the opposite of this EQ here. I'm just kind of making it crunchier. And then I have a clipper on it, which distorts it a little bit, and makes it just kind of sausagey. Okay, so I'll take a quick second to go through the arrangement here. And I have the master tuning. Each time the snare hits, goes up and pulls back down. And as you can see on the first clap, it goes down and it's up, long hit, right? So triplet, long hit, start the triplet back before the kick. So that little section. Then it's the exact same in the second half, except for instead of the long hit with the spacing right here, we have a stutter and then getting back into triplets. So okay, and then in this second little section, I turn up the grouchy automation. And the way that I kind of view this is like, I went in here, the pattern's the exact same as the first half. And I kind of just use the different tone from the grouchiness knob. Basically, there's three things coming together here. I have the grouchiness knob making it different in tone. And then I added these extra kicks to accentuate what I'm doing with the master tuning here. So where this stutter happens, instead of like going in and saying like, oh, I want it to go back up real quick and this and that. No, I just kind of like took the automation that I already had and treated it as like its own instrument. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll just repeat that here, you know? Letting me, instead of like trying to force what I think will work in this section, I'm just like using this as another instrument in my toolkit, if that makes any sense. It's just, I've found it to be a quicker more fun, like you get more surprising results. Like if I go in and say like, oh, this down hit should happen and then two really quick little ones, I used to do it that way, but the problem would be is I would go in, draw the automation, put 20 minutes into doing some work and making it exactly how I wanted it, and then listen to it and be like, I don't like that much, maybe I'll try doing a down up sweep or this and that, and it would turn into just a real progress stopper in the track. So I will say, if you're ever using this master trick, the master tuning trick, or any of the other automations here, feel free to like go in and chop those around and like slide them around, using this here. Right? You can get a lot quicker and funner and cleaner results, and like keep the process going by not trying to use this as a like, you do what I say synth. You're just kind of working with what the synth is giving you. It's almost like playing a guitar. Like you don't run, I don't know because I don't play guitar, but I would assume like the best players treat their instrument with enough respect to like let them do what they're doing and not say like, you got to do what I'm trying to get you to do. I don't know if that's a good explanation, but like I try and view each of these pieces as I don't control them. They do what they do, and when they do what they do well, I let them shine, if that makes any sense. I know that's kind of like a little bit overly poetic maybe, but that's how I try and treat that. So then when I have this little flourish that we've gotten from the master tuning knob, I also add in an extra kick. So just these extra kicks there help to flavor it and give a good, bit of variation to this section of the drop. Then going in here, I just drew a quick little automation change to this. So let me turn the drums off real quick. And also, right, so I have this, and instead of having that long note, I just stop it. I remove that last little hit, and then six triplets in a row. I have the tone knob up here, so it's changing the tone like I showed earlier. And then the pull back down here, I did just go in and draw these two, and instead of, I didn't plan this. I just said like, well, here's one and there's one. So I have that, and then on this pull back down here on this triplet, I turn the FM switch on. And then with the drums added to it, I just kind of set this flow in the arrangement. And as you can see, like this little, it's like go, stop, kicks, go, stop, kicks, go. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, I'm just trying to kind of add a little bit of tension to this section that if it's too similar to this, I think gets stale. So I'm probably going too in depth here, but we'll just keep it rolling. So then for this final section, I pitch the pullback down on the automation, on the master tuning automation right here. The pullback down is pitched up an octave, the FM is turned on, and the tone is being like pulled through. So if you open up the synth here, as you can see, it's changing the Schratz wavetable and the basic wavetable and just giving it a nice like clean pull through to again add more variation, because these two sections are very similar. These two sections are very similar. And that's just a quick way to like keep your song moving, I think, in a unique direction. So I know that's a lot to go through there, but the rest of this is going to be real quick. So let's jump into the sub now. All right, and so then going into the sub patch, which mirrors our gun patch, it is a square wave that's being driven by LFO2 on the level. It's set all the way back at a bar, so as you can see, we're only making it to about right here in the LFO. And as you can see here on the LFO2, there is a rate modulation to slow it down, which is done by this LFO3 to slow it down for the two growl hits, these two. So as you can see, that one sub is the sub for everything except for the other patch that I'm not going to show in this. So our oscillator B is set to a sine wave, also pitched down 3 octaves. So giving it a little more punchiness to the fundamental frequency. And then also I have a noise, which is pitched all the way up, and the key tracking is turned on. And it doesn't add too much until I turn the filter on, which is only affecting A and B, not the noise. So then we have the last thing is there's a master tuning pitch drop. It's really quick, and if we turn it off, just makes it a little less gunny, or gives a less of a transient to it. By adding it in, it kind of just you can really feel that in like on a bigger system, or if you're listening on bigger speakers, whereas smaller speakers, that doesn't do too much. I mean, it does some, but not too much. So then going into our effects, no multiband this time, just regular compression, and you can just kind of copy the settings there. So then I have a destructor on this, which is a fruity native distortion unit, adding a lot of crunchiness to it. Then an EQ, bringing some of those mids that will get pesky out of it, the low mids, and then boosting the lows and boosting the highs to kind of let that noise stand out a little bit. And now we have an OTT on it, and there it gets chunky again. So boosting the highs a lot, the lows not a little bit, and then the mids a little bit as well. And this is quite a chunky sub. Normally I don't do subs that are this slammed, but I felt like this worked for this one, so. Then I'm V-clipping it to sausage it out, and I have a compressor on it. And that compressor is just kind of flattening the sound a little bit more. And then as you can see, the master tuning here is linked to the same channel as the gun hit. And then jumping into the last bit of the sound design here, we have the quarter note hit, which is a cloned patch, right? So I took the grumpy hit, cloned it, and then extended this first LFO, the amp LFO, out by, to a quarter note in length. Changed this one to a bar. So it takes quite a bit longer to get to its peak. And then I have this set to a half note, and the mode is set to off, so it doesn't it only syncs to the host and doesn't reset on each note hit. And as you can see, that's going up and pulling back on the comb, the bandpass comb, so it goes kind of high and then brings it back to the bottom. And then this, let me turn this back to 40%. And then this modulator is changed, so the second filter, instead of a high notch, is a band peak. And so as you can see, it's kind of going up and down, and it's set to a half too. So this first note, it starts, the second note, it ends, which mirrors what goes on in the first filter. Then the last thing I'll say is the sub is brought into this one, and it's not sent directly out. It's just it's going through the same filtering, and it's just to give a little bit more body to the low end and the mid range. And what I could have done, and then I have the automation, the macro knobs on here, not following the same notes as the gun notes, which I could have done. I could have just used the same automation for both of those. But instead I just added some tone modulation, so every time that it hits, there is a new shape to this tone modulation, right? Oh, we got the vocals coming in there. Whoops. So as you can see, that just adds a little bit of variation to each of those hits, and I could have done the grouchiness knob as well. It probably would have had some cool variation. Yeah, it definitely would have. But I forgot about it, so that's all right. So moving into the post effects here, first thing I did was run it to through a resonator, and that just gives it a little combiness, some distortion, and a speaker, which the speaker gives it some stereo image, but it cuts quite a bit of the high end out of it. So I kept it on pretty low. Then I have an OTT, boosting the mids, boosting the highs, and then a chorus. Just kind of modulating the stereo as chorus tends to do. I don't remember what that was set to. We'll leave it there. And then the last thing that I have here is this little band right here. There's another high boost on this, but then there's also a mid band sweep, which helps this bass stand out from the grumpy bass. Right, because that one's pretty high, a lot of high end to it. And by adding that mid boost, I'll go ahead and turn the OTC on. Yeah, it boosts the high some more, and then I clip it. And as you can see, by having that band modulate, it just adds another little layer to it. So yeah, and so that's gonna do it for this one, y'all. I hope you learned something. If you wanted to see how to do this sound, I'm gonna do a separate tutorial for that one. So yeah, I hope you learned something. Please do all the stuff that helps the channel, and I will see y'all next time. Bye bye.